Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 61 of Quattroporte, the review series for Gran Turismo's sedans, be it sports sedans or sports saloons, super saloons as some call them. And this particular vehicle is the final version of the Mitsubishi Evo lineage, which we're going to be featuring in this series, the Mitsubishi Evo VII in particular, and I'm reviewing the normal Evo VII in effect, not the GTA with the automatic gearbox, not the RS with the lighter weight, but the normal GSR. Now this vehicle is probably one of the least popular Evos, in a similar way to the R33 Skyline, not having, it would seem at least, as many fans as say the R32 or R34. That being said, it still does have fans, like with the R33 Skyline. Now this particular vehicle is one of my personally preferred Evos of the lineage. I prefer the older ones. The Evo 5 and 7 in particular are probably my favourites, and this particular model has a slightly simpler look to it than many of the other Evos. It's a very slab-like design, not with an overt amount of detail to it. At the same time though, I personally think that this is a pretty good looking car, and I always have thought that. You don't see a huge amount of them used though. So why is that? Because most of the Evos that we have reviewed so far tend to be fairly similar to each other. So is this one bad, or is it just overlooked? Well, in some ways it is not quite as good as some of the other Evos. The weight, for instance, is a little higher than some of the others. The horsepower is at still a similar level though, so overall I think it's more a case that people must just not like this car as much, probably due to its visuals, I guess, because there's not really much else to put you off of this car. As far as overall value, well, it's an Evo, so the price is never going to be overly high. It's just under 30 grand, so the value for money is very good, I would say. Of course you get a 2-litre turbo, all-wheel drive, fully tuned. As I said, it has very similar power to the others, 568 horsepower, 440 foot-pounds of torque, so as good as ever. The weight is a little higher than some, especially higher than the first 3 Evos, at 1147 kilos, but still, it's not ridiculously heavy. It's still a pretty good weight, and the horsepower per tonne is just under 500. It's actually 495. As far as the fully tuned PP, it sits at 565, which again is fairly similar to the other Evos. There is some differentiation between them, but not by much. They tend to hover around the same kind of territory. The only ones really which branch off are before the Evo 4 and the Evo 10. Basically both extremes, the latest version and the oldest versions. Everything in between tends to be fairly similar. Now that being said, each version of the Evo does definitely feel different. The older ones, such as the Evo 5 and 6 in particular, feel much more raw and aggressive. The Evo 4 has a good mix of everything. It was the kind of time where they were moving into being more aggressive, but at the same time it had some of the, not necessarily softness, but slightly more beginner-friendly nature of the first 3 Evos. Then you've got the Evo 7 and the Evo 8 to some degree, which kind of became a little softer again after the Evo 5 and 6, but nonetheless are still extremely quick. The Evo 9 was basically a very minor facelift of the Evo 8 visually, not that much of a difference overall. The performance was a little bit more aggressive, and then the Evo 10 really overhauled everything, became a completely different vehicle to all of the others, with the same traits of course though of an Evo. Now this particular vehicle basically seems to just fall into that no man's land where people just don't use it because they don't need to. There are just other options there that are more obvious. That being said, I personally like the handling on this car more than some of the other Evos. The handling is smoother, it's a little softer, and it's not necessarily easier because none of the Evos are difficult to drive as such, but it does feel a little more beginner friendly. It's a less aggressive vehicle, and maybe that's another reason why people don't like it as much. They want them to be more aggressive. But personally, I love the handling on the Evo 7. It's smooth, it's consistent, it's reliable, and it's got more than enough grip. The looks are a matter of opinion. I personally like the car, but I can understand why some people would think maybe it's a little too understated for an Evo. It certainly doesn't look as eye-catching as some of the others. But overall, for pure performance and from a factual point of view of what you get for the money, the Evo 7 is as good as pretty much any other Evo. So overall, it's not necessarily a vehicle which I would recommend instead of any of the other Evos, because they're all good in their own ways, but this definitely isn't a car which should be avoided. It's a car which, if you're an Evo fan, definitely get one, but if you're an Evo fan, you've probably already got one. I personally use this as one of my preferred Evos, but that will differentiate from person to person, of course. Overall, it's a reliable performance car that's consistent and gives you exactly what you'd expect from an Evo. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.